A man in his late 50s only eats once a day. No breakfast, no lunch. Just a single meal around 5 p.m. He drinks butter coffee in the morning, trains like a professional boxer, and swears by skipping meals to stay in shape. Sounds extreme. That man is Frank Grillo, an action movie star you might have seen punching bad guys on screen. But here's the real question. Is this one-meal-a-day lifestyle actually healthy? Especially if you're not a Hollywood actor and you're just trying to lose weight, fix your metabolism, or shrink your belly after 45. Now, I'm not here to judge Frank. In fact, there's a lot to learn from what he does, and even more to be careful about. Because for many people I've worked with, real people in their 50s and 60s, trying to follow extreme diets like OMAD often backfires. They feel exhausted. Their cravings get worse. And somehow, the belly fat still doesn't budge. So today, we're going to break it all down. Not just what Frank Grillo eats, but what actually works for someone over 40, dealing with belly fat, insulin resistance, or stubborn weight that just won't go away. And we'll start where Frank's story begins, with his love for bread, olive oil, and red wine.
I could live on bread and wine, the allure of the Mediterranean diet.
Frank Grillo once said, "If I could just live on bread, olive oil, and red wine, I'd be the happiest person on the planet." And honestly, that sentiment hits home for many folks, especially once they hit their 50s. Something about getting older makes me appreciate the simple things more. A warm slice of bread. A drizzle of good olive oil isn't a glass of wine at the end of the day. It's comforting, familiar. But here's what's interesting. That combination doesn't just nostalgic. It isn't at all lines up with one of the most well-studied, health-supporting ways of eating out there, the Mediterranean diet. Of course, this doesn't mean diving into garlic bread like a healthy food. The real Mediterranean approach is about balance, quality ingredients, and eating with intention. Slowing down, enjoying meals, and nourishing your body without obsessing over every bite. The Mediterranean way is less about indulgence and more about balance. Whole grains, fresh vegetables, healthy fats, and a strong connection to food as experience, not just fuel. I had a patient in her early 60s, postmenopausal, struggling with belly fat, frustrated with diets. We didn't count calories. Instead, we helped her build slow, Mediterranean-style meals. Roasted vegetables, lean protein, olive oil, and yes, homemade sourdough once a week. 6 months later, she dropped 2 dress sizes. No starvation, no stress, just rhythm and respect for food. So before we chase strict rules or trendy diets, maybe the answer lies in eating like people who've lived well for generations. But here's the twist. The Mediterranean diet can backfire if you misunderstand it. Let's talk about isn't next.
From 6 meals a day to 1. Is OMAD really the answer?
Frank Grillo used to eat every 3 hours. Chicken, steak, protein every few hours, like clockwork. Then one day, he stopped. Now he only eats once a day. That's OMAD, 1 meal a day. Here, it sounds simple, right? But for people over 45, OMAD isn't your trendy shortcut. It's a strategy that can work beautifully for me, and backfire for others. Excess fasting, especially OMAD or 1 meal a day, has undoubtedly become a hot trend. And to be fair, it really does help for some people. Blood sugar improves, insulin levels don't change, and stubborn belly fat finally starts to shrink. But here's the thing most people don't hear enough about. If your hormones are already out of whack, or if you're living with chronic stress, fasting too hard, too soon can actually backfire. I've seen it firsthand. It's those who genuinely wanted to do something good for their bodies, let's do OMAD, and ended up wiped out by mid-afternoon, irritable, craving sugar at night, and feeling like they failed. Not because they lacked willpower, but because their bodies weren't ready for that stress. One gentleman in his early 60s came to me after trying OMAD for 2 months. He'd lost a few pounds, but couldn't sleep, felt cold all the time, and his cravings were out of control. When we switched to a 10-hour eating window, added a protein-rich lunch, and kept your diet light, his energy returned and the belly fat started melting. So, is OMAD here's answer? For some, yes. But it's not a magic bullet, and certainly not a one-size-fits-all. Next, look at what Frank starts his day with. Bulletproof coffee. Is it as powerful as people claim?
Bulletproof coffee and no breakfast. Boosting or burning out your metabolism?
Frank starts his day with bulletproof coffee. A mix of coffee, grass-fed ghee, and collagen protein. It sounds like a magic hack for many people. No carbs, no crash, just pure energy. And to be fair, this high-fat coffee can help you feel full longer, especially if you're skipping breakfast. It may even help stabilize blood sugar in the short term. But here's where it gets tricky, especially at age 45. For some people, especially women in menopause or men with adrenal fatigue, skipping breakfast and running only on fat and caffeine can send stress hormones into overdrive. I once worked with a woman in her late 50s that had poor beats. She drank bulletproof coffee every morning and skipped meals, hoping it would help with weight loss. But instead, she became anxious, struggled with cravings, and her blood sugar got worse. We shifted her breakfast to something simple: 2 eggs, some spinach, and a small slice of sourdough. Within 3 weeks, her energy stabilized and she stopped needing an afternoon nap. The point is, bulletproof coffee isn't bad, but it's not a substitute for nourishment. After 40, your metabolism becomes more sensitive. Sometimes, your body needs more food to feel safe. So, what happens when someone trains hard every day on this eating plan? That wouldn't be what we're going to unpack next.
2.5 hours of daily training. Necessary or overkill after 40? Frank Grillo trains 2.5 hours daily. Boxing, lifting, sweating like it's his job. And well, it is. But for the average person over 40, the question is, do you really need to train like a movie star to stay fit and lose belly fat? The short answer is no. In fact, overdoing it can backfire. Intense workouts daily can elevate cortisol levels, increase inflammation, and even lead to muscle breakdown, especially if you're not fueling properly. I've worked with a 52-year-old client who was jogging and weightlifting daily for months, but his let's get it wouldn't budge. He was exhausted, sleeping orally, and constantly sore. We domed his workout time in half, switched 3 strength sessions a week, added light evening walks, and prioritized recovery. Within 6 weeks, his waistline shrank, his mood lifted, and his sleep improved dramatically. The truth is, after 40, your body responds better to smart stress than more stress. It's not about burning calories. It's about signaling your body to burn fat, not muscle. So if you're pushing but feeling worse, it might be time to tweak your routine. And speaking of hidden stress, what happens when you chase big muscles and big meals at the same time? Let's talk about that next. The hidden cost of action hero diets. What they don't tell you.
When Frank trained for boss level, he would try 3 hours: steak, chicken, protein, repeat. He gained 20 pounds of muscle, looked like a superhero, but afterward, he admitted it took him 2.5 years to feel normal again. That's the part we rarely hear about. The truth is, these action hero diets, high proton, extreme training, rigid eating schedules, aren't built for long-term health. They're designed for cameras, not for real life. I've seen this in patients. One man in his 850 followed a strict 6 meals a day bodybuilding slan he found online. At first he felt strong, but soon his diet was a mess. He had constant bloating and his blood pressure went up. Why? Because his body wasn't covering. The studio wasn't constant eating, he doesn't eat load, and pressure to maintain a fitness look pushed his symptoms to overload. When we scaled back, gave him spacious cest, and focused on quality over quantity, his gut healed, didn't his mind. The takeaway? You don't need to eat like a Marvel character to be healthy. In fact, chasing unrealistic body ideals can silently harm your metabolism. But what about the other extreme? Eating clean, fasting, and yet still gaining belly fat. That's where insulin resistance comes in. Let's explore it next.
I don't count calories or step on a scale. And wasn't eating for men over 50?
Frank Grillo says he doesn't count calories, doesn't weigh himself, and doesn't obsess over numbers. He knows what his body needs. And that's a beautiful goal, to trust your body again. But here's the truth. For many men over 50, that level of intuition doesn't come easily. Why? Because years of dieting, stress, and metabolic shifts have dulled their natural hunger signals. I worked with a 61-year-old man who thought he was eating clean, small portions, low fat, lots of salads. But he was constantly fatigued, had no libido, and his belly kept going. When we spoke closer, he was barely eating 1,200 calories a day. His body wasn't burning fat, it was storing it out of survival. We adjusted his meals to include more protein, healthy fats, and fiber. Slowly, he learned to recognize real hunger, stop eating when satisfied, and enjoy food again without fear. Intuitive eating can work, but only if your body is hormonally balanced and metabolically safe. Otherwise, what you think is intuition may just be old habits and survival mode talking. So before you throw out the scale, you must rebuild trust from the inside out. And the first step? Understanding what her cravings and fatigue are really telling you. That's where we're heading next. Bread, wine, and emotional eating. When food becomes comfort after 50. When Frank Grillo calls his dirty, naughty lits, it makes you smile. But dig a little deeper, and it reveals something many people hears or 50 quietly deal with. Emotional eating. At this stage of life, food becomes more than nutrition. It's nostalgia. It's safety. It's a connection. A glass of red wine to unwind. A warm loaf of bread to soothe the loneliness. And slowly, almost unthinkingly, these comforts become coping mechanisms. I had a 58-year-old client who ate clean all week, but every Sunday night, she'd sit alone with half a bottle of Merlot and cry. Not because she doesn't eat, but because food is the only consistent source of comfort after a divorce. The problem isn't the bread or the wine, it's why we reach for them. Food should bring joy, yes, but not replace healing. And here's the good news. Once she addressed the root, her cravings faded. She started choosing food. It's what she loved back. So if you find yourself eating not out of hunger, but out of habit or old patterns, it's not about willpower, it's about awareness. And the first step is learning to listen to your body again, especially when it whispers through fatigue, cold hands, or sleepless nights. Let's look at those signs next.
Don't copy, customize. You don't need to train like Frank Grillo. You don't need to drink bull, that's coffee, skip breakfast, or live off salad and red wine. What you need is this, a strategy that furthers life, your body, and your season of health. That's the real lesson here. Every plan in this video worked for someone, whether OMAD, intuitive eating, or action hurt setting. But it didn't work for everyone. I've had patients in their 60s who lost weight just by walking after dinner and eating well-proteined breakfast. Others must reduce exercise to reduce inflammation and stubbornness, and they won't become fat. One man once told me, "I spent 10 years copying bodybuilders online, until I realized my body was asking for something entirely different." That's the moment fundamental transformation begins. When you stop chasing trends and start listening inward. So don't copy. Customize. Ask better questions. Test what works. Be kind to your body. And most of all, give it time. Healing after 40 isn't a 30-day challenge. It's a conversation between you and your metabolism. One small choice at a time. If this spoke to you, let's keep going,
because in the following video, we'll uncover the silent signs of insulin resistance and how it could be the real reason your belly fat won't budge.